a proud product of Guyana's bittersweet sugar. This book is mainly about reflection and a few thoughts for the future.
Some projections.
Some projections for the future. You know, it is said that in each of us there is a book or two or sometimes three books. We all have a story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
How we tell it, when we tell it, how important it is. Only the reader.
Sure.
Now, I open by saying it's mainly about reflection. And in this section on reflections, I like to quote you saying, "There's no better way of multiplying goodies than by sharing them among people who can continue the sharing processes so that we can optimize and maximize our accumulated storehouse of ideas."
Actually said that?
Wow. You did.
How we hearing it from you sounds a little foreign.
This is just one reason for writing this
Yes,
book,
sure.
for sharing this book. What are some of the other reasons for sharing this book with us?
I suppose a way of expressing my gratitude in a tangible way for the great parents I had, particularly my mother. It's a way of acknowledging how parenthood, and particularly in my case, it was almost single parenthood because my parents were separated when I was quite small. But I was very fortunate to have been blessed actually with a stepfather who, for all practical purposes,
There was no step in it.
There was no step in it, you know.
Yeah.
And therefore it is also a dedication, as it were, to step-fatherhood, step-childrenhood, step-motherhood. You know, in my case,
An
as you said,
endorsement.
yes, there was no step. You know, and I consider myself really fortunate to have had that experience, knowing as I do the difficulty that some children have to go through when there's a broken family. I have been spared a lot of that, and so this book, in a way, provides a kind of testimony to, and I think I devoted a few paragraphs to that concept of the unique step brothers, stepfathers, stepchildren, and that sort of thing.
Yes, you harped on it a lot. Yes.
How we were able to live like one big family. There was no the step, as you said, was out completely. So it's one, a dedication to my mother, two, a recording of how it is possible for children, parents, so-called step-children, step-parents, to forget that they are not from the same parentage. And of course, in terms of reflection as a career, to show how, despite all the difficulties that were so obvious and so much present in the sugar industry in which I grew up, to live through a period where seismic changes took place in terms of changing the managerial style, the management concepts, the opportunities for locals to prove themselves, and in my case, to move from the stage of bailing punt and manual labor to become a director of the company, all with the help provided by the company itself in terms of scholarships and studies abroad and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a testimony to several things.
Yes.
Career-wise, family-wise, and above all, an expression of my gratitude for the area in which I grew up in Guyana, Blairmont, which is bordered by Ithaca on the one hand and Rossignol on the other hand, and Blairmont in the center. And I have to say that my experiences, again, I don't know, it was just pure fortune. The so-called racial divide never featured. As I was growing up, some of my best friends are still in Ithaca and Rossignol. We grew up together, and I think it's a testimony to the understanding that I experienced growing up in a multiracial environment.
And this is important here. Just coming to me, I'm flicking through the book, and Professor Suresh Narayan is saying, we must, about your life,
Yes.
we must endorse the notion that race has no role in the work of nation building.
Yes. 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 Particularly,
Emphatic, yes.
particularly in a small society like ours, we cannot let these diversions stymie the development of the country.
Yeah, yeah. It's also endorsement, he says, of the enduring value of family
Yes. Yes.
and community.
Yes. Yes.
So then we can say that you're a bit fortunate.
Extremely fortunate. So, as I said, the family in this case is not your regular, coherent family. It is. My stepfather was married 3 times before. Can you imagine growing up with 3 sets of children, and how my mother managed,
To keep it all together.
keep it all together is still, a mystery to me. Still a mystery to me.
Although
But-
you've lived through the time.
But they did it. They did it. Both my parents, my mother and my stepfather, they did it. And the book is testimony to this type of thing, that people can overcome difficulties that are thrust on them, by a little bit of understanding and tolerance.
Well, we're talking around the book. Let's talk to the book now. It says that this is your story, an unusual perspective from the lower rungs to the upper echelons. Take us through that movement from the lower rungs to the upper echelons in
Okay.
regiment.
Okay.
You were born in...
I was born at a place called 47 Billies in the Quarantine. But when my parents split up and my mother moved back with my grandparents,
yes.
at Nig, which is a little community in front of Albion Estate. That's where a bit of my boyhood was spent until my mother remarried and moved to Blairmont. And you got to, in reality, say that I grew up at Blairmont and had my education there, and then went to high school in New Amsterdam, from Learmont. And the now going to high school, given the background and the number of children and my parents, never went to school. Going to high school was unusual in those days. Not only for them, but for most people. I mean,
In that,
yeah, I can count on the fingers of one hand the boys who I went to primary school with, who eventually went to high school in New Amsterdam. You had to pay fees, and for you to go to high school in the first place meant you're robbing your parents of your income, and
That's true.
secondly, taking from them to pay for the school fees. Luckily, I was able to use whatever influence my parents had to do weekend work and work during the school holidays to help and save money to pay for the fees and the compulsory books that had to be bought and things like that. So I remember when things like paying for writing exams, when you had to do that, my mother had to go and pawn her jewelry.
Yeah, I've heard stories like that.
And I think it's again a testimony to their foresight that this kind of sacrifice.
Especially that they were not readers, they were not
Themselves,
well-bred,
no,
they were not
they were
educated.
illiterate, completely
Right.
illiterate, completely
Yeah.
illiterate.
But to have foresight,
But they were intelligent. I can tell you, my mother especially was an extremely intelligent woman.
Economist.
There's some names that she used to find to call to describe the neighbors straight from the dictionary. Where she got the words from, I don't know. But the lack of education, was not evident from the intelligence that my parents projected. I was blessed in that way, very, very blessed.
It's something to think about for those who have had to struggle for an education. They value it so much more.
Yes.
Right? And you had a lot to say about that, you know what I mean? Page 169, you're saying that I commend the pursuit of knowledge, education, and personal professional development, as well as the unstinted sharing of these, which can only rebound to the advancement of ourselves and
the
our
community.
society.
Yes, yes.
Wonderful word. When the last time I spoke, I said, I like the use of the language. Beautiful.
Thanks.
Well written.
Thanks.
Well written. Really nice. Really like that. Don't let me stop you with the story. You stay with your story. You're going to high school and
Yeah,
studying.
so going to high school, was not easy, and I'm on reflection, I have to thank God that there was the foresight to do some of the things I did. For example, instead of buying all the books, I would borrow the books from my friends and read up at nights.